Hello everybody and welcome to the Happy Dystopian. Today I want to talk to you about CBDC, or central bank digital currencies. I've been reading a lot about CBDCs in the news lately, with both America, Europe and China working to create their prototype and move towards digital currency. But for a long time I really didn't know what it was, and in fact it was very hard to figure out. And I think this is due to two things. So the central banks often use quite misleading language, which already includes a spin. And then journalists are not as interested in this topic because it's hard, it's complicated, it's boring. So that's why I needed to do quite some investigating. Well, if you look at the name digital currency, it's already quite misleading. Already the vast majority of transactions in the world are taking place digitally. Being able to digitally transfer your dollars, euros, or other currencies. But what is meant by a digital currency is that you will no longer have a bank account, but you will have a direct account at your central bank. So that is the definition of what we are looking at here. And officially, the reason for doing this is to compete better with cryptocurrencies. As I've described in previous videos, the cryptocurrency adoption has increased tremendously over the last months and years. And central banks are trying to compete with this by creating their own digital currency, which can also be transferred online. Well, of course, there was immediately an outrage among the banks. Bankers are afraid that if people have their bank account directly with the central bank, that they will no longer deposit their savings with the retail bank. And those savings are needed by the banks to use, to lend, and to invest, and to increase the value. So the banks are angry that it might lead to a source of liquidity which they will lose in the future. So that sounds good in theory, right? I mean, we are going to do something that annoys the bankers and which brings more power to the government. So all good there, right? Yeah, it might seem that way. But I did some investigation and now I will tell you more about what the real reason is for wanting these central bank digital currencies. First of all, to refute the argument that it's going to be a competition to cryptocurrencies, the whole reason why those cryptocurrencies are so powerful and so popular is that the central bankers do not have influence over these cryptocurrencies. So that is a fact which I'm sure all central bankers know, but basically refuse to acknowledge. Increasing the power of the central bank will not create a new alternative to cryptocurrencies. They do, however, have two very real reasons for wanting to have a digital currency at the central bank. And the first reason is intelligence. If financial transactions are taking place in retail banks, there are a lot of opportunities for companies and individuals to hide what they are doing from the government. For example, hide your money to make sure that you do not have to pay taxes on it, engage in other tax avoiding behavior, but also crime. Terrorism and organized crime also needs a lot of money. And if all of the money is being managed centrally by the central bank, then it will be harder to carry out illicit activities. So that is a good argument for having a central bank digital currency. It could help prevent terrorism and fight crime. On the other hand, it does mean a further centralization of power within the economy. And then there is a second reason as well, which is perhaps even more insidious. And that is that if everybody has their bank account directly at the central bank, you can carry out monetary policy not through the commercial banks, but directly with your consumers. And this could take a number of different forms, which have already been discussed by academics. For instance, you could put an expiration date on your money. So for instance, there is a crisis and people do not have enough money to spend, and the central bank wants to give them one-time sum of money, as took place in the United States with $1,200 US. They can actually put an expiration date on that to make sure that the $1,200 is spent and it does not end up in a bank account and is not used for investments. So that is one way in which monetary policy could be carried out at the consumer level. Another possibility could be negative interest rates. Right now, if your bank would charge a negative interest, you would simply move your money elsewhere, go to another bank, or even take out cash or buy jewelry or gold because you don't want the bank charging you a negative interest. Well, in the new central bank digital currency situation, there won't be any alternatives, so negative interest would be possible. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, the central bank will be able to choose where you spend your money. So for instance, right now, due to the COVID pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns, a lot of restaurants are in big trouble. So the central bank could say, okay, we're going to give everyone 500 euros, but you can only spend it in restaurants. So the monetary policy could become much more targeted. So yeah, I think this deserves a lot more attention. And I think we really need to be careful and make sure that this does not happen. First of all, it's a further centralization of power to a central bank, which is, as I discussed previously, a non-majoritarian institution, which means that voters have no influence, that there is no democratic control, and that it is up to the institution themselves to make their policy. And secondly, if we take the commercial banks out of the equation in terms of savings accounts and checking accounts, we are going to be looking at a real serious loss of competition. As I mentioned previously, right now, if your bank does something you do not like, you can leave them and go to a different bank. And that both helps to improve service, but also as a break to any of the most outrageous policies. For instance, if your bank decides to sell your information online to advertisers, then savers have a way to respond to this by going to a different bank. So that will no longer be possible in the central bank digital currency situation. So I hope I gave you some more information, and I would really suggest you investigate this a bit further and see what's going on. For now, stay sane, and I will see you next week.